So we just launched our N1 training site, and the biggest feature on that right now, by far, is the exercise library, and it is a beast. It is definitely something that is unrivaled in the industry right now in terms of not just the quality of the information, but the amount of information that you get. Literally, if you are looking to better yourself as a trainee or a coach, you could just play around in that exercise library and you would get the most, or you would get more out of that than you would most courses that you can take on biomechanics, exercise, program design, any of that shit, because you learn so much about what the qualities of an individual exercise are, so the whys that you would use it, because in there we have not only here's the exercise and here's the primary muscles that work, also the secondary muscles that are incorporated with that, but you also get to see the quality that those exercises are typically used for, whether that be for hypertrophy training, more metabolic training. Obviously, we try not to pigeonhole exercises because there's ways to use them for multiple purposes, but we just try and give you guys, full disclaimer, how we use them most often. Obviously, when you're limited on equipment or whatever, then you have to be more creative. But when you understand all the information that comes in the library, you can do that. So with that, there is also the resistance profile as well as the muscle length, which if you guys don't understand the difference of those, is a very important things to understand when you're looking at figuring out what exercises to choose and how to pair them. So when we look at the position or muscle length of an exercise, that is the actual length of that muscle belly. Like, is it getting to a fully stretch, and is it getting to a fully shortened position? Is it getting all the way to both extremes? You need to be able to understand that so that you can understand if I have an exercise that doesn't quite get to a certain position, do I want to make sure I accomplish that position in another exercise, right? So with our library, you can do that. You can look and see, like, all right, I want to look at all the bicep exercises that work to fully shortened position, and you can see those. And then if you're trying to design a short lengthened superset, which is one of the most valuable supersets you can do for hypertrophy, because it allows for a lot of output, because you're essentially reaching out to a new group of motor units. What you can do then is you can just switch the position to lengthened, and then you can see exercises that would be complementary in terms of training that muscle in a different length. So to give you guys an example of that, so a high cable curl would work the bicep in its shortened position if you have it set up properly, whereas you could take like an incline dumbbell curl and that would work the bicep in a lengthened position, again, if set up properly. Now, that's muscle length. We also have resistance profile on there for the muscles. And so what resistance profile tells you is actually where the exercise is most challenging. So it doesn't matter the range of motion that the exercise works in, we're giving you the resistance profile for that exercise. So it's important to differentiate the difference between an exercise that is challenging in its lengthened position versus an exercise that works the lengthened position of a muscle group. And sometimes you can get both. So if we use the example that I had for muscle position, a high pulley curl, where or what the resistance profile of that is going to be dependent on where you set that cable in relationship to your arm. So if you set it so that the cable is pulling essentially out at 90 degrees of elbow flexion, so the mid-range, well, then the resistance is going to be greatest there, right? So that's going to be a mid-range resistance profile. But if you were to say do this with the cables higher than your shoulder, so that when you were into like full elbow flexion, the cable is almost pulling your arm like up out of that, well, then the resistance profile might also be greatest in the short. So you'd have short position and a short bias resistance profile. So when we look at that for the other exercise, the incline dumbbell curl, for instance, well, at the bottom of an incline dumbbell curl, the dumbbell is just pulling down. It's not really putting a lot of resistance on the bicep. If you hold the dumbbell halfway up, so at 90 degrees elbow flexion, that's where the dumbbell is actually heaviest. So again, we have a mid-range resistance profile. So you could potentially do two exercises that work the muscle length in two different positions but have the same resistance profile, Or if you wanted to have a greater divergence between those exercises, you could also make sure the resistance profile was different as well as the muscle length. Or you could choose to use different resistance profiles and same muscle length. There's different reasons why we would pick these. We go over them in detail in our programming for trainability course, which is course 2 on the N1 education. But the big thing for you guys that aren't quite to that level yet or aren't in the course is understanding that these are options to get more out of your training, to be able to get more versatility, to be able to take the same exercises and pair them differently and be able to get new stimulus, right? To make it a new neurological challenge for your body. So if we take that lengthened exercise, the dumbbell curl, dumbbell incline curl, and we were to say switch that over to a low pulley curl, so same shoulder position, we're still in that lengthened bicep, but now the cables are pulling a little bit back. Now we have more load at the bottom of that position, so now that is not only a lengthened position but also a lengthened resistance profile. So with just those 2 exercises, now you have multiple variations of each. Now you could do supersetting those 2 back and forth. You could have multiple combinations. I'm not going to do the math in my head right now because I'll probably screw it up because all of my blood is in my core right now because it's freezing outside. But that's a lot more combinations. So when you are programming or trying to pick exercise pairings, what you want to do is you want to constantly diversify the types of supersets you're doing or the type of stress that you're putting on the muscle in accordance to the goal that you happen to be working on. So some of these positions or resistance profiles will be better for metabolic training versus hypertrophy training versus working on different neurological qualities such as explosive strength versus maximal strength versus overcoming resistance or absorbing force, different things like that. Again, we covered this all in the course in detail, but if you are just jumping on the training site, you can really start to get a lot of really cool gems just by looking at these exercises or searching based off of the quality rather than the exercise.